Hi, I'm Sir Michael, and you're watching Valenzuela Facebook Live for English 6, your online classroom, streaming directly to your home from our city's pride, the Valenzuela City School of Mathematics and Science. Today, we are going to discuss the most essential learning competency, make connections between information viewed and personal experiences, EN6VC-4D-1.4, with a subskill focus on writing a 3-line 4-stanza poem, EN6WC-1A-2.2.2. Before we start, you need to comment your name, your school, and your grade and section down in the comment box for your attendance. I will be giving you 30 seconds to do it, and your time starts now. So if you're ready, get your paper and pen, sit up straight, listen carefully, and let's start our class today. Hello everyone, I hope you are all doing well at home right now. I know that it has been very hard for you and all of us to just stay at home. The good thing is that there is now the internet to show us so many things about the world we live in. But sometimes, depending on the location and the weather, we have some issues with the internet connection. And those instances are so boring. It may also tempt you to go outside of your house and play with your friends, but for your own sake, I must remind you, you must stay at home. You know, while you are at home, you can do a lot of things like helping with your household chores, taking care of your younger siblings, and the good old studying, which includes reading, writing, solving math problems, and even by playing puzzles too. There are so many things that you can do while staying safe inside your houses, even without the internet. But do you know what we and the older generation did to entertain ourselves before the invention of the internet? People used to read books and magazines to pass the time. Yes, the good old-fashioned way of spending time. Some of us are used to reading novels and even poems. While some of you might think it's not interesting, there are so many benefits that you can get from reading, like increasing your vocabulary, stimulating your imagination and your curiosity, developing your brain, social communication skills, and a lot more. You can check the other benefits of reading to children on this website, www.raisingsmartkids.com. Again, reading is important. So, why not, for today's lesson, let us read a poem. What is a poem, you might ask? Now, according to literarydevices.net, a poem is a collection of spoken or written words that expresses ideas or emotion in a colorful and imaginative style. A poem is comprised of a particular rhythmic and metrical pattern. It is a literary technique that is different from prose or ordinary speech, as it is either in metrical pattern or in free verse. Writers or poets express their emotions through this medium more easily, as they face difficulty when expressing through some other kinds of medium. It expresses also the purpose of light to take the readers towards the right path. In addition, it teaches them a moral lesson using sugar-coated languages. Okay, so as an example, let me read to you a poem that talks about the beauty of one of God's creations that is very important to us. What is that? The trees. Yes, the one that give us the oxygen that we breathe, the shade during the hot days, wood for our houses, paper for us to write in, and so much more. This poem is also on your workbook on page 4 of your English module. But before we read the poem, let's study some words so you will know what these words mean. The first one is the word pressed. The word pressed is an obsolete noun that means a loan or something that is borrowed. For example, kings offered press to abled men in exchange for them to fight in his army. Letter B. Lift. A verb that means to raise, elevate, or put into a higher position. Example, Rose, lift your feet. I need to mop the floor. So that is the word lift. Let's have the third one. It's letter C. Wear. A verb which means to carry or have on the body or about a person as a covering, equipment, ornament, or the like. Example, Lisa likes to wear a blue dress. So wearing. Okay. Letter D. Oh, robins. Robins, okay. The word robin is a noun. They are a migratory songbird that are often seen on top of trees making nests. So robins are birds. Example, I saw a nest and a couple of robins on the tree outside. The last one, okay, letter E, bosom. Bosom is a noun which means breast. For example, the baby is quietly sleeping on his mother's bosom. Now that we are done unlocking the vocabulary, we can now proceed with reading the poem. Let me read the poem alone in the first reading, while you listen. Then, in the second reading, you can read the poem with me. So, here's the poem. Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summers wear a nest of robins in her hair. Upon those bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Okay, this time, read the poem with me. Say it loud and don't be shy. Okay, are you ready? Let's read. Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who ultimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Okay, so did you like the poem that we have just read? Send some likes. That's nice. Okay, so it is a poem about the beauty of trees. But may I ask you, my dear learners, what features of the poem did you observe or notice while reading it? Aha, yes. We're now going to talk about those features. Again, What does a poem mean? A poem is a type of literature that conveys a thought, describes a scene, or tells a story in a concentrated, lyrical arrangement of words. Meaning to say, poems are the interplay of words and rhythm. This is because in poetry, words are strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas. There are different types of poems like rhyme poetry and free verse poetry. Rhyme poetry is the type of poetry where poems are structured or written with rhyming lines and meter, while free verse poetry follows no normal structure when authors write it. You can identify which is which by looking at them. Look at our examples. Poem number 1, an excerpt from I Carry Your Heart With Me by E. Cummings. And poem number 2, Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost. After looking at the two poems, what did you notice? Are they the same? Yes, that is right. They are not the same. First, by just glancing at the two poems, we can notice that they are different. This is in part because the first poem does not have a nice looking form, while the second one is pleasing to the eyes, with a neat and clean arrangement. Second, when we try to read the first poem, we can notice that there is no rhyming at all, while the second one has. So, which one is under the rhyme poetry category? Yes, that is correct. The second poem. Therefore, the first poem or the first one is a free verse poem, which does not rhyme. But both of them are poems. They simply differ in their characteristics. Next, let us talk about the sound device. Sound devices are resources used by poets to convey and reinforce the meaning or experience of poetry through the skillful use of sound. There are many different types of sound devices like onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, and consonance. First, we have the onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is the process of creating a word that phonetically imitates, resembles, or suggests the sound that it describes. Some examples are the sounds made by animals like meow, arf arf, and moo by the cow. These are all sounds produced by animals. Next, we have the alliteration. Alliteration is the use of the same beginning consonant sound in a line or verse. Example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. As you can see from the example, almost all the words used in the sentence start with the letter P and the sound of P. Then, we have assonance. This is the repetition of identical or similar vowel sounds in a series of words, phrases, and or syllables. Example, try to light the fire. See that the vowel sounds are all similar. Try, light, fire. Again, try, light, fire. They all have the I sound in them. We also have the consonants. This is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning, middle, or end of at least two words in a line of poetry. Example, the Humpy Bumpy Road. Humpy, bumpy. Okay. Under the sound devices is the rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is the pattern of rhyme that comes at the end of each verse or line in poetry. Let's go back to the poem trees. Since the last word in the first line is C, we label it as A. We just label it as A. All the end words in each line having the same sound with C will be labeled as A. And if not, we label it B, and so on. Therefore, the rhyme scheme of the poem Trees by Joyce Kilmer is AA, BB, CC, DD, EE, AA. Notice the pattern there? Every line is paired with a line that has a similar sounding last word. Then, they all go in pairs. That pattern is the rhyme scheme. How about the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay? What do you think is the rhyme scheme? That's correct. It's AA, BB, CC, DD. Another element that we must discuss is the structure of a poem. The structure of a poem refers to how it was crafted or the way it was presented to the reader by the poet. A poem with a strong structure allows the reader's eyes to moving easily from beginning to end, helping to create a particular response from the reader. In addition, under the structure, we can have the stanza. A stanza refers to a group of lines in a poem. It is also often called as a verse. On the other hand, a line refers to a group of words arranged into a row. Now, what we have here is the poem of Robert Frost, Nothing Gold Can Stay. Looking at the structure, this poem of Robert Frost has 2 stanzas, with 4 lines each. Now, you're ready to apply what you have learned about poems. Let's try to study this poem entitled Jelly Beans by Valerie Danoff. Okay, let's have the question number 1. Is the poem free verse or rhyme poetry? Look at the poem. Is it a free verse or a rhyme poetry? What do you think? That's correct. This is a rhyme poetry. Okay. Question number 2. How many stanzas does this poem have? The stanzas. How many stanzas does this poem have? Wow, that's amazing. That is correct. It has 2 stanzas. Question number 3. How many lines does each stanza have? Wonderful. There are 4 lines for every stanza in this poem. Question number 4. In the first stanza, what sound devices can you observe? Look for the sound devices. Great! There are assonance and consonants in the first stanza. And question number 5. Can you identify the rhyme scheme of this poem? What do you think is the rhyme scheme of this poem? Terrific! AA, BB, BB, AA. That is the rhyme scheme of this poem. I am proud of you. You now know how to read and study poems. Congratulations! So, to sum up, in today's lesson, we talk about poems, which is a type of literature that conveys a thought, describes a scene, or tells a story. It is also an interplay of words and rhythm because in poetry, words are strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas. We also talk about rhyme poetry, which follows the structure of rhyming lines and meter, while free verse poetry follows no structure at all. There are also sound devices such as alliteration, assonance, and consonance, which add skillful use of sound to convey and reinforce meaning or experience of the poetry. This also includes the rhyme scheme, which is the pattern of rhyme that comes at the end of each verse or line in poetry. And last but not the least, we have stanza and line, which is part of the structure of the poem. Stanza is the group of lines, a poem, and the line refers to a group of words arranged in a row. My dear learners, if you have reached this part of the lesson, please tap the heart button in the comment section for me to know that you are still there, listening and watching me. Thank you. Okay, so we are now on the part of the live stream where I will answer some of your questions written in the comment box. I will give you another 1 minute to type in your questions below. Please do not ask questions that are not related to our topic today. Your 1 minute starts right now. Okay, so we are now going to read some questions from the comment section and I will try to answer them for you. Let us have the question number 1. Okay, so hello Sir Michael. Hi. I learned a lot today about poems, but it seems that writing a poem is hard. Is there any way that we can write poem easily? Okay, so he is trying to write a poem. Okay, so he is asking how to write poems easier. Okay, so thank you for your question. Now, like all kinds of composition, writing a poem will be difficult if your vocabulary is limited or few. My advice, you need to read, and read a lot to gain ideas and styles from authors or writers. From there, you can try to integrate and pattern your ideas and feelings into the poem that you are about to write. It will also be nice if you have a dictionary, thesaurus, or Google by your side to assist you in searching for rhyming words and their meanings. Speaking of rhyming words, by the way, okay, and the words that you can add on your poem, maybe you will find it hard or next to impossible to add the longest word in English. Do you know what's the longest word in English? It is pneumono-ultramicroscopic silico-volcanoconiosis. Okay, so this is a word that refers to a lung disease contracted from inhalation of very fine silica or dust particles, especially during when a volcano is erupting. Okay, so if you happen to manage to put that word, okay, into a poem, I would be super amazed with you. Okay, but kidding aside, practice writing a poem. Okay, reading a lot, that helps. Okay, let's have the second question. How many stanzas are needed to write a poem? What a simple but intelligent kind of question. That's good. Now, to answer your question there is no required number of stanzas to compose or write a poem per se. Because remember, we have the free verse. For elementary student, okay, it is just that most elementary pupils like you are already expected to be able to write a 3-line, 4-stanza poem. So, that is why this episode is about writing a 3-line, 4-stanza poem. Because we are expecting that you can write already a poem like that. If you could recall from your lessons in your previous grade, by the way, you would by now know what a haiku is. Okay, so a haiku is a specific type of Japanese poem which has 17 syllables divided into 3 lines of 5-7-5 syllables. Now, haikus are typically written with a subject about nature. Now, for me, maybe you can start writing poems with a haiku. Then, from there, you can train yourself to write longer and more complex types of poems. And that's it. Maybe you can write great poems that will be put in books and eternalized throughout the literature. Okay? So, thank you for your question. Next, and let's have the last question, I think. Question number 3. Question here. Are songs and poems the same? Wow, thank you for your question. Both songs and poems are almost the same. There's no doubt in that. The main difference between them is that songs are set into music. There is that sound. Okay? On the other hand, poems, while having sound devices, rhymes, okay, are not set into music, but can be set into music if needed. Okay, for example, our Philippine national anthem, Lupang Hinirang, was originally written as an incidental music, meaning it doesn't have lyrics when it was adopted as the anthem of the revolutionary First Philippine Republic, and subsequently played during the proclamation of the Philippine independence way back in June 12, 1898. Now, did you know that the lyrics of our national anthem were only adapted from the poem Tierra Adorada, written by Jose Palma in 1899. The Spanish lyrics were only translated into Tagalog beginning in the 1940s, and a final Filipino version from the 1960s was revised from the 1956 version with the present lyrics that we know of today. So, just like that, songs and poems are almost the same, but they are entirely made with a different thinking by the poet, okay? So, there you go. So, thank you for your questions. Now, I would like to thank you all for your questions and an apology for other questions that I was not able to answer today. Just remember that learning starts with you, the learner, asking questions. Tomorrow, you will have a discussion with your English subject teacher. You can ask all your questions and clarify some of your ideas. So, do not forget to participate in the online discussion, okay, tomorrow. May I also remind you to browse your learning packets or modules in grade 6. Our module was written by Sir John Louis G. Macam of Antonio M. Serapio Elementary School. To all my fellow English teachers watching, if you want a copy of my PowerPoint presentation for this topic, you can download it using the link that you can see on the board. Just remember to use your DepEd email address to gain the access to the Google Drive. I hope that you have enjoyed today's lesson. Tune in again for the next live stream of the Valenzuela Live for English 6. As our Secretary of Education, Leonor Briones mentioned, in any situation, learning must continue. Stay home, stay safe, and God bless us all. This is Sir Michael your live streaming teacher for Valenzuela Live, saying thank you and have a great day.